Hello everyone, Tech Coach Chad Bryant here. In this webinar, we're going to be talking about Google Calendar, Google Meet, and some possible options for setting up appointment slots as we move into thinking about office hours during our distance learning phase. To kick things off, we're going to start from a new tab, and I'm going to head up to the waffle and go to Google Calendar. Your calendar may look different than mine if you're going here for the first time ever. I typically like to keep my calendar on week view, which you can see here up at the top right. The default view in calendar is month. I find this to be a little bit less useful for my day-to-day use, so I typically keep mine on week instead. Another option for visibility is just 5 days, which will show you from today the next 5 days. Again, not my favorite. I like to keep it on week. Just to kind of walk you through the interface a little bit, over on the left-hand side, you have a date picker over here and a month picker where you can see kind of a month overview. If you had any events on these individual days, you would see notification dots here indicating that there's something there on that date. Below that, you can see these are all the calendars that I am currently subscribed to. You can toggle any of them on and off as you like. I have a ton on mine because I am a co-teacher in a lot of different Google classrooms. But by default, you're going to have a calendar that is your name, and I've toggled it off just for the start of this video recording, but I can turn it back on so you can get a look at each event on my calendar. It's showing me all of the different things that I have going on. They are all blue. You can see the ones that are kind of this bold blue, meaning that they are coming up. And if they're this slightly faded out blue, you can see that those are events that have already passed. When I'm creating things kind of in my daily practice with Google Calendar, I usually like to block out a chunk of time by clicking and dragging on my Google Calendar. You can also just start by clicking on a block, and by default it's always going to reserve an hour of time. So let's say I wanted to schedule something for Saturday and I want to call it a test calendar event. Here you can customize date and times. So let's say instead of making it from 9 to 10, I wanted it to just be 30 minutes long, 9 to 9:30. And then you got a couple options here. You can add guests if you want to. You can add rooms, location, or conferencing. Those first two options would be great if we're in a normal classroom setting and you want to set a specific location for a meeting, but the one we really want to focus on here is the conferencing option. If you wanted to set up a Google Meet with your parents, with your class, etc., for me, the easiest way to do it is directly through Google Calendar. And you would just block out a time, like I already have, Saturday, 9 to 9:30, and when I want to add Google Meet functionality to this, I can either add at least one guest. So let's say if I wanted to add Dennis, it's automatically going to then create a meeting room for us just to give us the option of meeting virtually if we decided to do so. If I remove him, this is what it would look like if I had nobody there. Let's kind of get rid of all those. Add conferencing is going to be here, and that's going to allow me to generate a Google Meet room based on my need there. If at any point you want to drill down and see some additional options, you can always hit more options, and that's going to allow you to add guests again, add a location, etc., etc. If you wanted to set up something like office hours, for example, where you're setting up a Google Meet where parents can come in for a particular time period, you may want to set it up so that it repeats every week or every weekday or daily or every week on a Saturday. You can customize your settings from here. Scrolling down, you can add a description if you want to. So if you're adding somebody as a guest, they will also have the opportunity to see this. The nice thing about this section is if you're adding a guest, you can also create an attachment which will go out to all of the people who you are inviting. You might want to do that for meeting minutes or for any relevant documents that you want all attendees to look at. It could be a Google Doc, it could be a PDF, it could be just a picture, whatever the case may be. You can add your attachments there. I'm going to go ahead and hit save on this. So again, we've got that Google Hangouts Meet room that's been generated. Hit save. And now you can see that there's this new event on Saturday. One thing to note is when you're creating an event, you can also select which calendar you want to save it on. By default, it's always going to save it on your calendar, your personal calendar. But another example of how I use this tool is with the Google Expeditions, the VR goggles. I manage those kits and make sure, I keep track of where they are and which classrooms are going to be using them, etc. If I wanted to block out a period of time where I'm reserving the goggles and I'm going to be using them in a kindergarten classroom for the entire day, this lets the other stakeholders who want to use Google Expeditions, lets them know that the goggles would be unavailable for them on that particular day at a glance. I'm going to keep it on my personal calendar in this situation. You can also customize the color of individual events. So my calendar by default is blue, as we saw before. Let's make this red. And you'll see now it's got this kind of little blue banner on the left side. And it has the event in red. So I can see it's on my personal calendar because of the color match. But this is red, and it kind of makes it pop and stand out a little bit better. So that's how you add just a basic event with a Google Meet there in Google Calendar. One other feature that I wanted to talk about with Calendar specifically is the option to set up appointment slots. I'm going to delete this, and let's jump ahead a couple weeks to April 6th. Let's say I wanted to set up office hours for my parents or for my students, and I wanted them to book a specific block of time that's just for them. You can use this appointment slots feature in Calendar to do just that. So let's say I wanted to block out the time between 8 a.m. and 12 p.m. The process is kind of almost the same, but you can see that there are 3 types of possible options here. I can create an event, I can go out of office, which I never use. The one that we're going to talk about right now is appointment slots. When you're creating that, you're going to set if you want a single slot to be available, or most of the time you're going to want to do a chunk of time with a bunch of different slots available. Let's say I want my meetings to be 10 minutes. And I would suggest if you are a calendar user and you have some things on there already from your personal calendar, I would create a new calendar where you can put this particular event. But in this case, I'm just going to do my personal calendar. I'm going to hit save. What that's going to do now is if I click it again, you're going to see that I've got an appointments page for this calendar, and I forgot to give it a name. So I can always click on the pencil and go back in and edit. Let's call this Office Hours Week 1. I'm going to hit save again. All right, and you notice that it has this kind of 2x2 grid. That's the visual indicator that these are office hours. Let's click it again, go to appointments page. So what you're going to see, it's going to automatically load into today, but I'm going to jump ahead to the week where the office hours are. And you can see that that block that I set is going to be composed of these individual discrete 10-minute chunks of time. So if I click one, it's going to say, okay, what is it? It's Monday, April 6th from 8 to 8:10, where your attendees don't really need to fill it in because you're going to be meeting digitally. And then I could say, I am Chad's parents looking to meet and discuss Google Classroom, or whatever the case may be. Now that's automatically going to add to both people's calendars. So if I hit save, it will also, if somebody else were to click on that link to go to your appointment slots page, it's going to block that off. It will no longer be available to them to book, obviously, and they could grab one of these other times. For me, appointment slots are great. I don't really like how they look. The optics of it aren't super user friendly, and that's why I don't typically use this in my day-to-day practice. What I do use instead is a tool that is called Calendly. And Calendly is free. There is one restriction where you can only have one type of event running at a time. So in this case, while we're moving into distance learning, I've set it up so that teachers can grab 30-minute blocks with me, one-on-one, where they want to discuss whatever they need to discuss. And it will, kind of like with appointment slots and kind of like in Google Calendar when you're inviting guests, it generates that Google Meet for you automatically. Let me show you how I've set it up. So when you're creating your event, I gave it a name. I call it, in my case, Chad Chat Distance Learning. Now, some of us are kind of still playing around with the differences between Google Meet and Zoom. I'm experimenting with Zoom, and so you have the option of integrating with Zoom or with Google Meet, which I was doing initially. I'm just trying out Zoom. You can choose one or the other, and then you give your event a description here. You can also customize the link. So for me, it's going to be calendly.com/cbryanttech, Chad Chat Distance Learning. You can customize that as long as it's available. Here you can customize your color. I chose orange, the high school colors. Let's hit save and close. The next thing you're going to want to customize is the second option here. When can people book this event? So I've chosen slots for this week and last week of 9 to 5. For the spring break week coming up, I chose 9 to 3 instead there. But you can customize your times, choose your interval, and if you want to apply it to multiple days, just that day or all of the same day, like all Thursdays, you can do that. Or if you want to choose, I want to apply it to this day, this day, this day, and this day, you can customize what your availability is going to be on a day-by-day basis. So in the office hours situation, if you wanted to set it up Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 9 to 12 or whatever the case may be, that's how you would do it. Next, you can set a duration. They're in 15-minute increments, as you can see here, or you can set a custom time as well. Buffers prevents people from booking meetings back to back. Like if you wanted to have 5 minutes before as unavailable and 10 minutes after as unavailable, so you've got a little bit of time to kind of cool down and plan for the next meeting, you might want to use this buffers feature. I typically don't use it in my use case. Start time increments. So this is going to be the frequency. You want to make appointments available every 30 minutes, every 5 minutes, whatever the case may be. And that's going to be kind of based on your duration up here as well. Date range, how far in advance can people book you? Scheduling conditions. So this is nice because I don't want to have somebody book me and then have to be in that meeting in 5 minutes. So I set an hour time limit where if somebody wants to book a time with me, they have to do so at least an hour before that time arrives, just so I have a little bit of time to see what their question is, do any research that I need to do, and get prepared for the meeting. You can also set a maximum of allowed slots per day. For me, I'm setting 6. I kind of adjust this based on other demands that are being made on me on any particular day. The last thing that you want to think about is your questions that you want to ask people. So this is a nice feature with Calendly where when people want to book time with you, you can customize any of these options. So for me, by default, I'm gathering what is your name, what is your email address. It has to gather email address because then it needs to email that person and confirm the date and time and send them the link to the video conference. But you can customize and add additional questions here. So you can add whatever text you want. What is your favorite day of the week? You can make it a required question. And these are the types of questions you can have. One line would be little short response, multiple lines, paragraph text. Radio buttons would be like a multiple choice question. Checkboxes, choose more than one. And you can also collect a phone number. In this case, I'm going to do radio buttons, and we'll just do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so forth. You can also always add an other option if you want people to have the ability to enter their own information there. I'm going to hit cancel just so it doesn't mess that up. Once you're done setting it up in Calendly, it's going to, at the bottom of that event, it's going to generate a unique link. So for me, what I do is I copy this and I go into my email And at the bottom in my signature line, there is a permanent link here that's called Book Me. And if I click on this, that's the link to my Calendly page. Clicking on that, when parents or students or whomever wants to access your Calendly event, this is what they see on their end. Here's your description over here. It's telling them web conferencing is provided upon confirmation, and they can go forward in time and grab different days using the date picker here. Okay, so it's a pretty powerful tool. I think it's pretty great. The user interface is a little bit more user-friendly than that appointment slots, and for that reason, again, I don't use appointment slots, but it's certainly a viable option for you. One last thing that I wanted to show you while we're talking about video conferencing is Google Meet. So we already talked about how to set up Google Meet in Calendar. I just want to walk you through a couple of the features, and I'm just going to do a test room real quick. And when you set it up, I'm going to hit Join Now. So here's my room. If I wanted to share the room while I'm already in it with people, I can either copy the information here and email it to them, or I can manually key in people to invite here. I can add Nick, I can add Christiane, and so forth, and send an invite. Down at the bottom, just to walk you through what the interface looks like, a lot of you have already been using Google Meet for quite some time, but the Present Now option is here. Most of the time when I'm presenting, I choose to present my entire screen. It's going to have a little pop-up thumbnail of what people will see. Click it, share. Then I can start presenting my screen and doing whatever it is I need to do. Whenever you're ready to stop, there's a button at the bottom that says Stop Sharing. You can click on that, and it will take you back to your video. Also from here, you've got a couple options. As people come in, you will see them over here in the People section. You can mute people if you need to as they come in. Of course, they can always unmute themselves if they want to, but that's an option there. And you'll also have chat here. One of the questions I get about chat is, can I mute the students from having sidebar conversations? The answer is no. Zoom allows you to do that. Google Meet, unfortunately, doesn't have that functionality. Finally, you can record a meet by clicking on the three dots at the bottom. There's an option for record meeting. Takes a couple seconds to process usually, but then it starts recording, and then you can stop it whenever you're done. And it will generate automatically a video file and a transcript of chat if there was one, and put it into your Google Drive that you can then distribute to your students or distribute to, in this case, other teachers for professional development. I'm going to close out of that. So that's kind of an overview there. I'm going to close out of that again and back to here. So I'm not going to be using this appointment slots item, so I'm going to go ahead and trash it. Same thing for here. I mentioned earlier about adding separate calendars. My calendars is here, so again, remember these can be toggled on and off whenever you need. I'm going to scroll to the bottom. There's a plus button here in other calendars. If you at any point wanted to create a new calendar, you would do so from here. And you could give it a new calendar. Maybe you want it to be just for office hours. I would create that there and then make it create calendar. All right, so honestly, I get a lot of usability out of Google Calendar. It's how I organize my day. It's very visual. I go to it frequently throughout my day. One pro trick that I do with my tabs up at the top, and you may have noticed that in previous screen recordings, but I do something called pinning my tabs. What that does, you can see that it kind of shrinks it down and removes the close tab button. That's to make sure that I don't accidentally close it, because it's just going to add an extra step of having to go back and open it up again. In order for you to pin things, if you have right-click enabled on your whatever device you're on, you can right-click it and choose the option for pin. If you don't currently have right-click enabled on, say, a MacBook, you can hold down the control button and do what's called a control click. Hold control, click it, and you can pin and unpin that way. So for me, I always pin Google Drive, Gmail, and Calendar. You can shift those around as you like, and then I open my other tabs and do whatever work I need to do on the side. All right, that's it. As always, I'm here. If you need help, please reach out. Book a time with me via my Calendly if you want to talk about anything else in more detail, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks. Bye.